Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 4 of Drinking with the Boys. This is your host, as usual, Corey Stevens, joining you from Dallas, Texas. How's it going, Cowboys Nation? We have successfully navigated all of the preseason of the 2018 season, and we are 5 days away from Cowboys at Carolina Panthers. Are you ready? I'm ready. 5 days away. Sunday, the game is coming up. It's a beautiful Tuesday. I hope you had a good Labor Day weekend, everybody. I know I did. Cowboys game is at 3:30 on Fox, and the Carolina Panthers are, as of right now, a 3-point favorite, which essentially means that's a wash. Home field usually accounts for 3 points in the NFL. All right, so the roster has been officially cut down to 53, and I'm gonna walk you through all that. The Cowboys did let go of one of my favorites, Lance Lenore. They also went kind of short on running back and only kept 2. So they let go of Darius Jackson and Bo Scarborough, who I talked about both of those and how they were doing this preseason. Well, Darius Jackson got signed by the Green Bay Packers. So he is on their 53-man roster. That meant that Bo Scarborough was signed to the practice squad after Jackson was gone. For a moment, Bo Scarborough was not on any roster at all. Lance Lenore is on the practice squad. That does put him as the wide receiver who did lose to Deontay Thompson in a way in preseason. So essentially, 7th best Cowboys receiver. I think he has potential to show that he is better than just wide receiver number 7 on an NFL roster, but he's got to have playing time, and it would probably require an injury for that to happen. So, barring injury, he will spend the season on the practice squad again like he did last year. You remember last year the Cowboys traded away Ryan Switzer. That's right. So Ryan Switzer was a 4th-round pick, not this last year, but the year before. And he was traded to the Oakland Raiders for Jihad Ward. Jihad Ward, I talked to you about him this preseason. He looked okay. He did not make the team. He is gone. He was picked up off of the practice squad. Ryan Switzer was sent to the Steelers. He is not on the Raiders anymore. So Jihad Ward, yes, let's see. Colts picked him up. So he was cut, and the Colts picked him up off of waivers. That is the only. Oh, there is one more defensive tackle. So Charles Tapper got cut and added to the practice squad, but then the Cowboys went and picked up Aziz Shitu, another defensive tackle, and Charles Tapper is gone. So he is no longer with the Cowboys. Farewell, Charles Tapper from Oklahoma. Aziz Shitu was on the Eagles roster for a while, but never really played a game. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Quiero is a linebacker on the practice squad. In the defensive backfield, cornerback Donovan Olumba had a pretty good camp. He ended up on the practice squad. And we went out and signed Treston DeCoud. Treston DeCoud is another defensive back on our practice squad. At running back, I already mentioned Bo Scarborough, and also what you would consider maybe our 5th best running back. Currently kind of the fourth running back on the roster, would be Jordan Chun. And then at wide receiver, we mentioned Lance Lenore, but also one Dress Anderson is on our practice squad. And then offensive linemen Cody Wickman and Jake Campos. That is pretty much everyone. On the injured reserve, so the Cowboys' initial cut down to 53 included Noah Brown, which was a real head-scratcher, but if you understood their reasoning, they keep you on the initial roster so that it can put you on IR. So Noah Brown is on injured reserve, and then Deontay Thompson was initially cut, but since he's a veteran, he doesn't go to waivers right away. He's goes to free agency. Cowboys said don't sign anywhere else. He didn't. They signed him after they put Noah Brown on the injured reserve. Dayton Jones is also on the injured reserve. The defensive lineman. Remember, the Cowboys will have to make room on the defensive line in 1 month, come October, because David Irving will be unsuspended at that time. All right, so that is the clinical part. You've got the cuts in the practice squad. Now the emotional part. Dan Bailey, praise his name, Lord Bailey is no longer a Cowboy. Suffice to say, this cut came out of left field, and compared to all other roster moves that may have come out of left field in the NFL the last few days, this one put them all to shame. It was a huge surprise. Nobody expected there to be competition on the kicking position, the kicker position, and lo and behold, this new kid, Brett Maher, or Brett Maher, Maher, is the Dallas Cowboys kicker. Looks like Dan Bailey is probably going to sign with the Jets. That's the rumblings right now. All right, so look, Brett Maher has had success for several years in the Canadian Football League. Brett Maher also was on the Cowboys roster for a second in 2013. So he's actually kind of an older guy, maybe 28 years old, 27 years old. He's not a rookie. But this is his first NFL roster. So he was on the team for a second and he got cut. And he had a good preseason. He was the kicker in all the preseason games. Had a good training camp. He hit that 57-yarder right down the middle in the fourth preseason game versus the Texans. Looked like Jason Garrett might have actually had a nice little smile on his face when that happened. Maybe that was something they were planning at the time, and he was quite happy to see that. Dan Bailey, for all his accolades and performance in the past, Dan Bailey was only, his field goal percentage was down to 80%, I believe, last year. Let me look that up again real quick. So the thing is, okay, his career field goal percentage is at 88%. Also, I look at this real quick and I'm immediately struck by the fact that his longest field goal is 56 yards. 56 is long-ish, but it's not long by NFL standards. We're talking, Justin Tucker for the Baltimore Ravens, basically the gold standard of kickers in the NFL these days, hits from 60 a lot, quite often, really. And those 5 yards, are a big difference. So 2017 season, his longest was 56. He had none blocked. He played 12 games, so he was injured 4 games. Remember, Cowboys were rolling out Jeff Heath for a minute as their field goal kicker. His percentage was 75%. You look at his career. No games missed for 6 straight seasons, and then all of a sudden injury strikes, And you look at his career percentage. 86, 93, 93, 86, 93, right? Elite. And then the lowest among that, 84 in 2015, in 2016, sorry. Right? But that's not a reason for concern just because you go down 2 percentage points below your average, a couple percentage points below your average. But it was. It's just the facts. You look at those long ones, and breaking down these stats, breaking down kicker stats is not something that any Cowboys fans expected. But let's look at 2016. 2 years ago, Cowboys were 13-3, and Dan Bailey was a kicker, and he's perfect from anything under 40 yards. And then you have the 40 to 49 yard category for his kicks. And if you look, those were the two lowest percentages in his entire career. So 2016, in that range, 40 to 49 yards, 77.8%, 7 out of 9. And then last year, he hit 4 out of 5. That 77 and 80%, that's the two lowest percentages that he's had the entire career from that range. You look at his heyday, maybe his best year was 2013. Percentage, 93%, right? He hit 10 out of 10 from 40 to 49 yards. That's incredible. That's awesome. That's why you pay him big bucks. That's why he was making $3 million a year. But he missed a couple years ago. He missed one last year. And then you look at the 50-plus yards, right? 50-plus yards, he was 3 out of 6 2 years ago and 3 out of 5 last year. That's 50 and 60%, right? Those are the two lowest numbers he's had for his career. The first year, he was 50%. You look at even his PATs. Yes, the entire year, the entire league was afflicted by the point after touchdowns, the extra point is moved back 15 yards. Yes, it did lower everyone's percentage. For 6 years, Dan Bailey had 100%. He didn't miss a single extra point. Last year, he missed 2. It just look, yes. The NFL is a cutthroat business, and when your skills decline, teams say, "Hey, I've got no use for you anymore." But this was not just like completely the Cowboys, cutting out their arm to spite themselves. This is not the Cowboys with a locker room problem. The Cowboys would have paid. The cap issue is kind of just icing on the cake. Yes, Brett Maher costs maybe $400,000, and Dan Bailey about 8 times more at $3 million, $3.5 million. The cap savings are nice, but they're pretty minimal. The thing is, you look at 75% field goals, 15 out of 20 last year. You look at 4 games missed because of injury. You look at his second half percentage being worse than his first half percentage, and it's a cutthroat league, and you say, Dan, you were great, but you're gone. I'm sorry. Yes, history is good, but this is what have you done for me lately, league, and it was looking a little shaky, and they've decided to move along. So if you look at what Babe Bloffenberg said, I definitely agree with that. He went on to Twitter and said, look, every single Cowboys Nation is a vocal one. And for every single miss from Brett Maher this year, Cowboys fans will be screaming, Dan Bailey would have hit that. And there might be truth to that, but we just have to move along. This is the way things are. This is 2018. We're not going to be watching Dan Bailey kick every single field goal for the New York Jets. We wish him well, but what you're looking at is, can Brett Maher kick roughly the same percentage. Does he potentially even have a longer, more powerful leg? And can we say, you know, we can live with one missed field goal? Maybe we'll say, hey, yeah, Dan Bailey probably wouldn't have missed that. Look, if it costs us a game, yeah, that's going to be a problem. We can't second guess every single field goal kick. Let's move on to more important things. As a fan base, let's not get so caught up into this that we're bitter for years and years. Look, Dan Bailey had a cult following for the Cowboys fans. Many called him Lord Bailey. And he was a team leader, but he's gone, so no use talking about it anymore. This is Drinking with the Boys, so we talk about the Cowboys, and he's not a Cowboy anymore, so that's just the way it is. I want to mention Travis Frederick for a minute. He's not on injured reserve. This is probably great news. I say probably because we don't actually know. Travis Frederick, as we all know, was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's a autoimmune disease. It affects the coating of your nerves, and I think he caught it early, and he's been going through treatment already, and he's been even seen with the team at practice. So he's not dead. Can confirm he's not dead. If the Cowboys felt like his prognosis would be firmly on the greater than 8 game side, the Cowboys would have placed him on injured reserve. So what this is telling us is that the Cowboys feel quite confidently that his prognosis for recovery and return to the team is at or under 8 games. We're talking 2 months. And because the Cowboys feel that potentially he can return to the team before 2 months, they are going to roll the dice, keep him on the active roster. He's going to be obviously inactive. He's going to stay on the active roster with the hope that he can return to the active roster at around game 6, maybe game 7, maybe game 5. We don't know. The point is his recovery is looking great. The recovery, we don't know the ins and outs of how he's progressing. We don't know how he's faring mentally. We don't know how much strength he's lost. But what we can say is that Travis Frederick has given the team reason enough to hope that he will miss less than 8 games, and that in itself is a small miracle. The Cowboys roster cuts, as you look at them, they only kept 2 running backs. They only kept 4 cornerbacks. They do have, like we mentioned, 2. Donovan Alumba and Treston DeCoud. So 2 cornerbacks on the practice squad. Maybe a safety. No, the Cowboys kept 5 safeties. So, Xavier Woods, Kayvon Frazier, Jeff Heath, and not Ward, but Huff, Marqueston Huff. And then they signed another one, Ibrahim somebody. So the Cowboys have 5 safeties. They're going a little long on linebacker. Players like Chris Covington and Damian March-Lillard, both lower on the roster linebackers that will probably be inactive on game day. But the Cowboys felt like both of those would have played well and also showed enough promise. Covington being a 4th-round pick, they didn't want to cut him and subject him to the waiver wire. So they're saving him on the roster. The defensive lineman is looking like a strength for the Cowboys. All indications are pointing to Randy Gregory being good to go game 1, and also I would say raring to go. I'd say look for him to play about 10 or 15 snaps in mostly 3rd down situations. Strictly as I suspect that he will go, if everything goes fine for Randy Gregory and he's not caught up in anything else NFL suspension wise all this personal conduct policy, blah, 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 that he's trying to get past. If everything goes perfectly, I suspect that maybe by about the midpoint of the season, we'll see him as more than just a pass rush specialist, because that is still definitely a strong suit, and he is still a little undersized for the every down defensive lineman position. But we'll see how that progresses. This is something that I've been talking about for weeks, but Jalen Smith is the guy that I am most excited about on the defensive side of the ball. I am ready for him to show off to the world what he can do, and I feel like he's definitely ready to show off what he can do against Carolina Panthers. Now, one of the guys that is going to put him to the test is Christian McCaffrey, former Stanford running back, essentially used as a Darren Sproles type. He was listed as a running back on your roster for the Chargers and the Eagles for years, but he was used in passing situations so often, and any good offensive coordinator would split him wide, would send him on a little flares towards the sideline. He wasn't going to be there as a main running back or blocking back, but so Christian McCaffrey, same, often is lined up as a wide receiver. He can run between the tackles. That's not his strength. He's a bit undersized, but he's very quick and shifty, and he can run good routes. And so you get him matched up on a linebacker. You get him a little bit wider than the linebacker is comfortable with, and he can definitely exploit that. I would say that the Cowboys have two very, very athletic linebackers in Sean Lee and Jalen Smith, and that if anybody can successfully cover Christian McCaffrey, the Cowboys should be up to the task. Now, we'll see how that goes. Many, many, many times in the past, the Cowboys coaching staff has disappointed us, and we look at the post-game report and we say, how did we let this guy tear us up for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns? And so I pray that that's not the result at Carolina. One of the things to look at in that matchup with Carolina is that on the injury report, the Carolina Panthers have 2 linemen on injury reserve and 2 linemen listed as questionable. So their depth is very, very shaky on the O-line right now. And when we're looking at the Cowboys to have an actually plus unit, an above average defensive line, it's looking like one of the strengths of our defense. This is a matchup that you have to successfully exploit. If you want to win, more than 8 games in the NFL, you need to be good at exploiting these matchups. And the matchup we're talking about is Tank Lawrence versus the Carolina Panthers offensive line. Taco Charlton versus the Carolina Panthers offensive line. Antoine Woods. Whoever else it is, if Randy Gregory gets in much, we have to get pressure. We have to get some sacks. We have to get containment. Remember, Cam Newton is a running quarterback, obviously. But if just like the Cowboys' offensive line was a big question mark due to injury last year when Tyron Smith went out, and we played Atlanta and we got exposed for 7 sacks, right? Well, this is what we need to do to Carolina. We need to put our mark on the season, and we need to have a 4 or 5 sack game against Carolina and say, hey, this is what happens when you don't have stud offensive linemen, is we're going to exploit you because we have stud defensive linemen. If you look at the upcoming schedule, the Clemson Tigers are coming to College Station to play the Texas A&M Aggies. Oh, wait. Y'all aren't here for Aggie news, but hey, I'm going to give it to you anyways. If we cover a little college football when it gets interesting, shoot me for it. Whatever. I'm an Aggie through and through, and that's a big game. Home game versus the number 2 team in the nation. We've got Jimbo Fisher and brand new coach. in College Station, and we got a home game, and it's going to be lively. And yes, Aggies are going to be underdogs, but the Aggies have successfully upset the favorites in the past. The Cowboys play at Carolina, at home versus the New York Giants, then at Seattle, and then at home versus the Detroit Lions. So obviously game 2, week 2, versus the Giants at home. Saquon Barkley comes to town. We will see these New York Giants, who everyone is acting like can go from second worst team in the NFL last year and make a leap like the Cowboys did. Remember, they had the 4th worst record a couple years back when they picked Zeke. Obviously, yes, that kind of turnaround is possible because the Cowboys went, I think, 4-12 and then 13-3. The turnaround is possible, but highly unlikely. We are also looking at catching magic in a bottle with Dak Prescott, his first year, having one of the best rookie quarterback seasons of all time, versus the Giants having a 38-year-old Eli Manning who has done nothing for you lately. Why are they still holding on to him? He's going to throw as many interceptions as he is touchdowns, basically. Maybe 15 interceptions and 28 touchdowns. That's nothing to write home about. And the New York Giants don't have an offensive line like the Cowboys did a couple years ago for Saquon to run behind. So this is, and to note one more thing, is that Zeke Elliott, his first couple games, was not the Zeke Elliott that tore up the league. The last 14 games of the 2016, sorry. No, even a guy like Saquon Barkley, who might actually be an incredible running back, still might take a couple games to get adjusted, hitting the hole the right speed, getting through there, not trying to bounce everything to the outside, getting this, preseason is not the real deal. Like Dak said after Game 4 against the Texans, this time, now the games are for real. We're going to have all the starters out. This is the regular season. There's no joking around anymore. So we'll see how that plays out in week 2. Definitely excited for the Carolina game. On the road, it is a pretty tough test for the Cowboys to start the season. But I am not very worried. I'm actually super confident going into this game. Definitely feel like we could control and win by 10. But hey, maybe that's just a homer in me. Like I've alluded to in the past, still working on getting some of those guests on the show. One's got a New Orleans Saints podcast. Different guys who are going to try to get on the show, have them call in or go join up with them and give you a little bit of a different perspective so you don't just have to get tired of hearing my voice. Obviously, like I said, 5 days away from the very first week of the NFL season. I think in 2 days we will have a Thursday night game to start the season off. I didn't look up who it is, and I don't really care right now. But yeah, I think that's all we got, folks. So thanks for listening to Drinking with the Boys. I'm also going to give you some more beer news coming up. Not so much beer news, but beer reviews maybe. Talk to you about Pegasus City Brews and walk you through how a few of their beers taste. That's Drinking with the Boys episode 4 for you. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful September 4th. Obviously, after Game 1, there will be another episode coming to you soon after that. Find me on Facebook and Instagram at Drinking with the Boys. Find me on Twitter at DRNKNW The Boys. You can listen to Drinking with the Boys on drinkingwiththeboys.podbean.com. You can listen to Drinking with the Boys on Spotify, on Overcast, anything your heart desires. So thanks, as always, for listening. Come Sunday afternoon, Watch the Cowboys beat the hell out of the Carolina Panthers. That's all I got for you. Thanks for joining. Have a good night.